I moved into a cheap basement apartment about 3 years ago when I was desperate and broke. It was one of those too-good-to-be-true listings in a small town just outside of Portland. Private entrance, utilities included, and most importantly, dirt cheap. The place wasn't glamorous by any means. The ceilings were low, the paint peeled in the corners, and there was a faint smell of mildew I couldn't scrub away no matter how much I cleaned. But I told myself it was just temporary, a stepping stone. I even convinced myself I could make it cozy. That optimism lasted about 3 nights, right up until I started hearing the scratching. It wasn't constant at first, just little tapping sounds late at night behind the wall in my bedroom. I assumed it was rats or maybe squirrels in the foundation. This place was old and in a wooded area, so it didn't seem impossible. But then the tapping turned to something else, something more deliberate. It would start right as I got into bed, soft scratches at first, then long drags like fingers trailing across drywall. I tried to ignore it, plugged in white noise machines, slept with music on, even wore earplugs, but nothing could block out the sound once I noticed it. Every night it grew louder, bolder, like something was trying to get my attention. One night the sound changed entirely. It wasn't scratching anymore. It was knocking. 3 slow knocks, spaced apart, coming from behind the wall near the foot of my bed. I sat up, heart thudding in my chest, straining to hear it again, and it did. 3 knocks, then silence. I got up the nerve to press my ear to the wall. At first there was nothing but silence. Then, barely audible, I heard breathing, deep, ragged, wet-sounding breathing, as if something was pressing its face right against the other side. I leapt back and didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I called the landlord. He brushed it off. Said the pipes sometimes groaned, or critters could get into the walls when it got cold. I knew it wasn't pipes, and I sure as hell knew it wasn't a squirrel knocking 3 times in perfect rhythm. But I didn't have anywhere else to go, so I stayed. I started sleeping on the couch in the tiny living room, avoiding the bedroom entirely. The scratching didn't follow me at first, but about a week later, I heard it again, this time behind the living room wall. Then the knocks came, always 3, always at night, always when I was about to fall asleep. I tried recording the sounds on my phone, but every time I played them back, there was nothing but static. Not even silence, just this awful, high-pitched static that made my ears ring. I even brought a friend over once, thinking I was losing my mind. She stayed the night. We both heard the knocking. She left before dawn and never came back. Said she felt something watching her from behind the wall. That was the first time I noticed the smell. It wasn't mildew anymore. It was something worse. Something rotting. I ripped out an old baseboard near the wall and found what looked like deep gouges, scratches running parallel across the inside, way too deep and too clean to be from a rodent. They looked more like claw marks. I was about to seal it back up when I noticed something wedged in the insulation. A photo, faded and torn. It showed a man standing in the same apartment, holding a cat, but his eyes were blacked out. Not scratched or burnt, just black, ink dark as if someone had purposely erased them. On the back was a date, 1997, and a single word, mine. That night, the knocking didn't stop after 3. It kept going, louder, more frantic, like fists pounding on the wall. Then came the whispering, muffled at first, then clearer. My name, over and over. Let me out. I see you. You're mine. I ran, left everything behind, called the landlord the next day and told him I was breaking the lease. He didn't even argue, just said, "That place has a history," and hung up. I found out later that a man who used to live there had gone missing in the 90s, never found. Rumor was he had a breakdown and sealed himself inside the walls. Police found weird symbols carved in the wood frame, scratch marks, even nails hammered from the inside. The landlord never renovated the unit, just repainted and re-rented it. I never went back. But sometimes late at night I still hear knocking, faint, deliberate, on the wall of whatever room I'm in. Always 3 knocks, always after dark. I don't know how, but it found me. My grandparents lived in a remote farmhouse surrounded by miles of open fields and dense woods. I used to spend summers there as a kid, and while I always loved the fresh air and freedom, there was something about the place that felt off. There were certain things my grandparents never talked about, like why they never went outside after dark, or why they kept all the curtains closed once the sun dipped behind the hills. I chalked it up to old habits or country superstition. That is, until the summer I turned 13. That's when I saw her. It started the night of a heavy storm. Lightning cracked the sky in bright flashes, and I remember watching it from the second-floor bedroom window. In one flash I saw movement at the edge of the cornfield. It was far but unmistakable. A figure, a girl. She stood still, almost as if she were waiting. Her white dress was soaked and clinging to her frame. Her long black hair was plastered across her face, and even though I couldn't make out her features, I knew she was staring right at the house. The lightning flashed again and she was gone. I figured my eyes were playing tricks on me, but the next morning I found muddy footprints on the porch, small ones, barefoot. I asked my grandma if anyone lived nearby. She said no. Not out this far, just us. I told her what I saw, expecting her to laugh or brush it off. Instead, her face went pale. "You didn't open the window, did you?" I shook my head, confused. She just nodded, murmuring, "Good. Don't ever." That day, she nailed the window shut. Didn't explain why. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at that same window, watching the field sway in the wind. Then, around 3 a.m., I heard something. A tapping, soft and rhythmic on the glass. But the window was on the second floor. I froze, slowly pulled back the curtain. She was there, standing on the ledge, eyes dark and empty, dress dripping. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear. And then she pressed her hand to the glass, a bloody palm print smeared across the pane. I screamed. My grandparents came running, but by the time they got there, she was gone. The print remained. My grandpa wiped it away without saying a word. The next morning they sent me home early. Years later, after both of them had passed, I went back to that farmhouse, just once. It was abandoned by then, overgrown and crumbling. The attic. I found an old box of newspaper clippings. One headline caught my eye. "Local girl missing in storm, last seen near cornfield." The photo was grainy, but I recognized her immediately. Same face, same dress, same hollow eyes. She vanished 50 years before I was born. No body ever found. Some say she drowned. Others say she got lost and wandered until she collapsed. But locals still whisper that she walks during storms looking for her way home. And if she sees you, if she chooses you, she'll never stop knocking. That was 10 years ago. I live in the city now, far from any cornfields, but every time a storm rolls through, I make sure the windows are locked, and I never ever look out. A few years ago, I took a part-time job delivering groceries to rural areas. Most of my deliveries were uneventful. Some long drives, a lot of silence, and the occasional overly friendly dog. But every now and then, I'd get sent to these isolated houses way off the grid. One delivery in particular has stayed with me, and no matter how hard I try to rationalize what happened, I've never been able to shake it. It was early spring, the roads were muddy, and I'd been sent to a cabin I'd never been to before. The app just gave me coordinates. No address, no name, somewhere deep in the backwoods. It took nearly an hour of winding dirt roads and spotty cell service to get there. The cabin was small, old, and surrounded by forest on all sides. There was no driveway, no lights on, and no sign of life. I knocked, waited, knocked again, nothing. I figured no one was home and was about to leave the groceries on the porch when I heard footsteps from behind the house. A man rounded the corner. He was tall, lanky, maybe in his 60s, and wearing an old faded green raincoat with the hood up. His face was shadowed, but I could see his mouth. He was smiling, too wide. "You're early," he said, voice low and gravelly. I apologized and handed over the bags. He didn't take them, just pointed toward the porch. "Leave them there." I did. He nodded once and disappeared back behind the cabin. That alone creeped me out a little. But as I walked back to my car, I felt something strange, like I was being watched, not by him but by someone else. On the drive back, the app glitched out. The delivery didn't register as completed, and it wouldn't let me move on to the next job. I had no service and couldn't call support, so I just restarted my phone and kept going. About 10 minutes later, I noticed headlights behind me. Their car, maybe, but it didn't feel right. The lights were too far apart and they bounced strangely like someone walking with two flashlights. I kept checking my mirrors, nothing. Then suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something step out from the trees along the road. A man, in a green raincoat, just standing there, staring as I passed. I hit the gas and didn't stop until I hit pavement again. I chalked it up to nerves or coincidence, but the next day I got another delivery for the same coordinates. I refused. Told my supervisor I wasn't going back there. He looked at the tablet and frowned. "That's weird," he said. "That delivery was completed yesterday." I told him I was there yesterday, but the app hadn't updated. He shook his head. "No, it says someone else delivered it this morning." I double-checked the logs. The timestamp showed a delivery made at 6:13 a.m., 3 hours before the store even opened. The photo confirmation was a dark, blurry image of a porch. The same porch. Only now there were two figures in the background. One I recognized immediately. The man in the green raincoat. The other was harder to make out, but it looked like someone standing right beside him. Same height, same clothes, same build. As me. I quit that job the next day. A week later, I drove by that same road, just out of curiosity. The cabin was gone. No porch, no structure, just trees. Like it had never been there at all. But sometimes on foggy mornings when I'm out driving early, I see a flash of green between the trees. And I swear, when I look in my rearview mirror, someone is following me on foot, two flashlights bouncing in the dark. Back in college, I rented a basement apartment in an old Victorian-style house that had been converted into units. The rent was cheap, the place was quiet, and the landlord lived on the main floor. At first, everything seemed fine, just the usual quirks of old houses, creaky floors, weird drafts, and pipes that groaned in the middle of the night. But about 2 weeks in, I started noticing a foul smell. Not like garbage or mildew, but something organic, rotting. It seemed to come and go, always stronger near the small door in the corner of my unit that led to the crawl space. It was sealed shut when I moved in, and I never thought twice about it until I realized the smell was always worse at night. Then the noises started. At first it was subtle, light scratching, barely noticeable under the hum of the fridge, but soon it became impossible to ignore. Scraping, thudding, like someone dragging themselves across dirt. The kind of sound you'd hear if something with nails was trying to dig upward. I told the landlord and he shrugged. "Probably a raccoon," he said, "or the plumbing." I didn't buy it, so one night I stayed up with all the lights off, sitting in the dark with my phone flashlight. Around 2:30 a.m. the sound started. Again. Only this time I realized it wasn't coming from the crawl space, it was coming up through the floorboards. I knelt by the sealed door and listened. I could hear breathing. Shallow, ragged breaths. I froze. My mind was racing. Was it a person, an animal, something else? I didn't sleep that night. The next day I bought a small security camera and set it up facing the crawl space door. That night I watched the footage live on my phone. For hours, nothing. Then, just after 3 a.m., the screen flickered. A faint thud echoed through the feed. The crawl space door shifted. Not open, but moved, as if something was pushing from the inside. I turned up the volume. A voice, whispering. I couldn't make out the words, but it repeated the same phrase over and over. The final time it came through clear. "Let me out." I left the lights on for the rest of the night. The next morning I confronted the landlord again. This time he looked uncomfortable. "I told them to seal that thing shut years ago," he muttered. "Thought it was done. Damn contractors probably cheaped out." When I pushed for details, he admitted something had happened in that house decades ago. A tenant went missing. The police searched everywhere, except the crawl space. It was too small, they said. No one could survive down there. "But we never found her," he added quietly. "And sometimes I swear I still hear her. That night, the camera picked up motion again, but this time something came out. Just a hand at first, pale, dirt-covered fingers groping at the floor. Then a head, hair-matted, skin stretched too tight. She didn't look human anymore. Her eyes were white, clouded, and her mouth hung open in a silent scream. She crawled halfway out and stared into the camera, her body twitching like she wasn't used to moving. Then she pointed directly at the lens and everything went black. I left that apartment the next day and never went back. The landlord didn't return my calls. A few weeks later, I saw a news article. House destroyed in gas explosion, no injuries reported. But I know what really happened. They didn't want to fix the crawl space. They wanted to seal it. For good. Because something was still alive down there, something that was never supposed to get out.